Hey there, GolfCask Nation. This is Brian Bailie.
Welcome to GolfCask Original Series, The Blend. Perfect for golf and whiskey enthusiasts
This is a
alike.
follow-up to last week's whiskey episode where we talked about grain to glass and kind of the essence, the DNA of whiskey. This is the DNA of golf. So what we're going to be able to show you is I made a slide for 90 shooters, 80 shooters, 70 shooters, and par or better shooters. And really, what are the main pieces you need to understand to get better? What are those big concepts that we have to understand? So without further ado, let's just dive in here and let's talk about the newbie, player shooting somewhere in the 90s. Now, just remember, as we're kind of moving through this chart, the preference and where you need to dial in will change, and your goals will change. Like things will have to get better and better. But so will your point of emphasis. But we'll show you as we go through this. So the newbie player, someone that's going to shoot somewhere in the 90s, right? You see here I say you're going to have probably 4 to 5 fingers for lateral dispersion. So what does that mean? Lateral dispersion is how left and right you miss the flag stick, but dispersion is also long and short. But left or right is what we're going to talk about the most. So if you're shooting somewhere in the 90s and above, you're going to be probably 4 to 5 fingers. If each finger, so if I stood up, looked at the flag stick, held up 3 fingers or 4 fingers or 5 fingers, right or left of the flag stick, that would show me my average dispersion. Each finger is roughly 3%. So at 5-finger dispersion, that is a 15% error. So what does that mean? At 100 yards, you're going to have a 15-yard dispersion. Put that in feet, that's 45 feet from the hole. You know what that means? If the pin's dead in the middle of the green, I'm still going to miss a lot of shots at 100 yards, left or right of the green, just because my dispersion is just too wide. So what we've got to start doing is when we are training and we're picking targets, we got to start holding up fingers, hitting into those fingers and say, how many times can I hit it within 5? How many can I hit within 4? How many can I hit within 3? And once I understand my ability to control dispersion, now going out on the golf course and targeting becomes disproportionately easier. So we're talking a really, really wide approach and off the tee pieces, right? So the wider we are in dispersions means even a good shot can end up really, really far away, and we must understand that. So going into the green, I talked about, if you wanted to understand scoring in the best way possible, think of shots to green and you think of total putts. So shots to green for someone shooting in the 90s is going to be somewhere in the 50s. We'll call it 55. And we're going to be looking at 36 putts, give or take. So that's going to be 80. So that's going to be 91. So those numbers will fluctuate depending on where you are. But again, what you're starting to see is shots to green is really, really important. So for a player shooting in the 90s, you're kind of doing on the putting green, but we've got to be faster getting to the greens. So greens in regulation, we're talking about 4 out of 18 holes. And of that, 2 of those are going to be within 20 feet and 2 of those are going to be outside of 20 feet. And this is kind of a good standard to start paying attention to. If I'm hitting 4 greens and all 4 greens are outside of 20 feet, my ability to control the golf ball is not quite good enough to be able to start shooting 90s or better, right? So just use these as kind of benchmarks to see where you stand. The reason we track inside of 20 footers because 90% of all birdies come from 20 feet and in. So we want to track how many opportunities we have, and then we want to see how many times at distance we are. When we actually miss the green. So again, a player that's shooting in the 90s, you're going to be missing the green 16 times around. A lot of bogeys there, and worse. What we're going to see is a scrambling percentage of about 15%. So at 16, so 10 would be 6, half of that would be 9. So we're looking at 9 to 10 bogeys guaranteed just because on the sheer fact that you're missing greens. So again, our ability to start controlling dispersion, start hitting more greens is a big piece for us to get better. But understanding that, again, our scrambling rate is going to be really, really tiny. And what's going to happen, and the reason it's going to be so tiny is when we chip, only 10% of our chips are going to be within 6 feet, and another 20% will be 12 feet and in, right? So we'll have 30% of our putts within 12 feet to save par. It means that we have 70% of our putts outside of that, which again, if you are outside of 12 feet, you're not going to be making many putts, right? The odds are against you. The further, every foot you get away from the hole from about 3 feet on, and you're losing anywhere from 6 to 10%. So as I keep getting further and further from the hole, my chances of making putts get slimmer and slimmer. So understanding that's the importance of proximities with approach. How often do I hit the green? How often within 20 feet? And then again, when I'm chipping, how often do I miss the green? How often do I hit it within 12 feet? How often do I hit it within 6 feet? That gives you a good understanding. So inside of training, we should be training 6 feet and in, ideally to hit at least 50% of our shots. Now, 90 shooter, no, but that's a good goal. And then of that, we're going to be looking at about 70% of our chips for a really good player inside of 12 feet. So just again, as a higher handicapper, we don't even really care about 6 feet and in, right? We're going to be chipping to 12 feet and in. So when you're doing your chipping training, we're going to put a 12-foot circle, put some tees out 12 feet around the hole, and then hit from different lie positions. And how many of them can I fit inside of 12 feet? Like I said, right now we're at 30%. If we're going to move up to our next level, which is shooting in the 80s, we're getting that 12 foot and in up to about 50%. So again, it just gives you that concept of how to get better. Total putts are going to be around 36, and your one putts are going to equal your 3 putts. So you're going to have roughly 3 putts, 1 putts per round, and you're going to have roughly 3 putts per round. So that's kind of what it looks like to shoot somewhere in the 90s. So now let's say that's what a newbie player looks like. Now, what does a casual player look like? Well, a casual player, we're going to say, is anybody that's going to start shooting somewhere in the 80s. We've gone from 4 fingers to 5 fingers of dispersion, 3 to 4, right? So what does that mean? So now our dispersion's from 9 to 12%. So at 100 yards, what does that mean? I'm either 9 to 12 yards away. 9 yards is 27 feet. Now we're starting to hit more greens. We're starting to have the ability to be on the putting green and do good stuff. So you can start to see what happens is basically every time we start moving up, we're going to start peeling back a finger. So maybe what you'll come to discover, maybe you ball strike it like an 80 shooter, but you putt it like a 90 shooter. Or maybe you hit it like a 70 shooter, you putt it like an 80 shooter, and you chip it like a 90 shooter. But again, we don't know that until we can quantify what you're doing. So what does the 80s player do a little bit different? Their shots to green is about 5 shots better. So they've taken 5 shots off the board just getting to the green faster, and their putts have dropped by about 2. So really what we see now is this is kind of an 88 shooter, and they are getting to the green in 50 shots, and their total putts are going to be right around 33. So you can see what the improvement is. So much bigger improvement on ball striking than putting. Shots to green, like I said, is at 50. Greens and regulations have almost doubled. We're up to 7. Shots inside of 20 feet. Again, you can see 3.5 are inside of 20 feet. 3.5 are outside of 20 feet. Again, you can kind of see that 50-50 ratio holding up, where 50% of your putts are inside of 20 feet, 50% when you hit the green are outside. Where you really start to see some big gains is inside of scrambling. So your scrambling now is getting up and down a quarter of the time. So 25% of the time, but you only have 11 opportunities. So you go from 11 to 16, you're reducing bogeys immediately. And also chips inside of 6 feet, we're looking at 25%, where the chips inside of 12 feet is up to about 50%. So again, you can see really a 15 to 20% growth inside of scrambling. So what we're starting to see to be an 80 shooter is our ball striking needs to get disproportionately better. So when people ask me what's the most important thing, I'm a putting coach first, short game coach second. I don't really do full game anymore. I'll do it on occasions for my son and stuff, but I don't really do full game anymore. So in the importance level, newbie players, casual players, really don't need to come see me, because my skill set really won't start to show up until you start getting in the 70s. So being able to control the golf ball is of the utmost importance. Starting to hit more greens, starting to control that dispersion rate, and then understanding from that, we'll actually start getting more greens, and our short game will start to get slowly better, but not because we're putting a lot of time and effort, just because, again, our ball striking is getting better, and our understanding of how to move the golf club, understanding the skills of controlling face, all that is getting better, and that kind of seeps into your short game. Now, remember, your 1 putts will be up over 4, and now your 3 putts are at 2. So what have we done? We've picked up one more 1 putt, and we've reduced to 3 putts. So there's our 2 putt gain, and we improved by 5 shots on shots to gain. So we've improved 7 shots just between these 2 players. And really, where was that done? A lot of that was done just because they started to control their dispersion, their angle of what it looks like. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go into YouTube. Rob Fales and I did a finger dispersion thing. Go to YouTube, golfcast.com. Go into your YouTube section, look under finger dispersions. I'm telling you, if you go watch those videos, I guarantee you, if you're a 90s and 80s shooter, you'll pick up 10, 20% off of your score immediately just by understanding how to start targeting better. So you can start to see the growth as a casual player. Now, here's where it gets fun, the dangerous player. Players that's starting to shoot in the 70s. This is me. I don't practice very much. I do like to play when I get a chance to play. So I bounce around the 70s, and these numbers really sum me up very well. So what does this mean? Now my dispersions are 2 to 3 fingers. I do 3 fingers, so I'm looking at 9% dispersion. So again, you can start to see my dispersion levels are starting to get tighter and tighter, which means I'm hitting more greens, and I'm putting myself in play and hitting at targets better. To the green, now I'm getting there in 43 shots. Before we're in the 80s, we're talking right around 50. So I've improved about 7 shots getting to the green. So if I play an 80 shooter and I'm a 70 shooter, I know that I'm going to get to the green over 18 holes roughly 7 shots faster than they do. Think of that. So again, this is really a big ball striking component. This is really important. So if you look at greens in regulation, I'm at about 11. The 80 shooter is roughly about 7, right? Now I have 6 putts inside of 20 feet for birdie, and I have 3.5 putts outside of 20 feet for birdie. So you're really starting to see what the difference is, right? So I have more opportunities to convert at birdie, right? The chances of me making birdie get disproportionately better. And that's really what we want, right? We want to have that ability to make birdie. And again, longer putts has the potential to 3 putt. So if I can keep that number low, I'll reduce 3 putts as well. My scrambling rate now is up to, I'm starting to pushing 50%. So what does that mean? If I miss half, let's say I'm hitting 11 greens, so I'm missing 7. So that means I'm going to make about 3.5 bogeys by missed greens. So with roughly a 50% scramble rate. So that piece is really, really important. We're starting to see how important it is. Now short game becomes really, really important because I'm hitting enough greens. I'm giving myself birdie opportunities. I'm starting to make birdie. So now I got to prevent bogey. And 70s players is really flushing bogey out of the system and starting to sneak up and making a little bit of birdie. You can see my P6 number is at 44% and my chips within 12 feet is up around 60%. So again, my proximities on ball striking and short game are just getting tighter and tighter, and that gives me just a disproportionately better chance to score. Golf's easy, right? Scoring's easy. On the green, what's happening? 32 putts. So again, I've improved about a putt and a half. You can see my 1 putts are up a little over 1, and my 3 putts are down about 1, and that's where I've picked up my 2 putts. So now I'm at 32 putts, 43 to the green, so that is how to shoot 77. Just like that. Golf's easy. Why are we not all doing this? So this is what a dangerous player would look like. Again, things to start thinking about here. Again, we're going to keep working on ball striking, keep tightening up that piece, getting off the tee. But really what we're going to pay attention to is a lot of short game and putting. Out the gate, 90 shooters and 80 shooters, it's a whole lot of full swing. Getting that better and better, and putting and short game kind of slowly move with it. Now we start getting into 70s. Ball striking is getting good enough. Now we've got to put more emphasis on around the green and on the green. And then the final is par or better. I used to be a par or better player way back when. I'm old now. I don't practice. I think I'm going to start practicing, though. I think I'm going to have some free time on my hands coming up. Maybe I will drive for making it to some senior stuff in the state and maybe USGA. It could be even a social media thing. 50 breaking 70. I like that. Let me flush that out. All right, anyways. So an enthusiast player, these are your elite players, are really good players. They're going to be shooting par or better. They're going to be 2 fingers or better, right? So now what does that mean? At 100 yards, that's 6%. So that would be 6 yards left or right of the holes. That's 18 feet. That's tour average. So with a wedge, at 100 yards, they're averaging about 18 feet from the hole. Again, this means I'm going to start hitting more greens. What are my greens now? They're up around 13, right? So we went from a 90 shooter, which is 4, to a 70 shooter, 70. We'll just call it 70, and they're going to hit roughly 13, 9 better, right? So that is why the really good player destroys a 90-plus shooter, just because they hit the green so often, they have less chance to make bogeys and worse. Again, 2-finger laterals, we can see shots to green at 41 and putts under 30, right? To break par or better, you're going to be putting sub 30. And then again, we're going to see total shots to the green. We're looking at 41. From the greens that we hit in regulation, we're going to be hitting about 8 of those inside of 20 feet and roughly 5 of those outside of. So you can see we're going to have 8 putts inside of 20 feet. And at this level, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 putts inside of 8 feet for birdie. Probably par 5 scoring, which is a big piece here. This is a big separator, par 5 scoring. But you can really start to see ball striking is a weapon, as a tool. And watch tour players. See how many greens they hit. See how many times they're inside of 20 feet. This is their recipe, right? They do a really good job at converting putts and things like that. But again, their proximities gives them that ability to shoot low. Around the green, scramble rate at 60%. So it's almost 50% better than a player shooting 90 plus. But the good news is they only have 5 opportunities around, where the 90 shooter had what? 11? No, they had 14. or whatever, 16 or whatever that number was. They had a huge number of chances to get up and down, where you can see the tour player only has 5 opportunities. So the 5 opportunities are 3. They're only making roughly 2 bogeys. So they're not making a lot of bogeys per round. Yes, tour players make bogeys. Bogeys will never be eliminated. But having a good short game, being good with ball striking, and a good putter, you can really reduce those rounds. And then on the green, inside of chips inside of 6 feet, they're looking at 52%. And you can see roughly 3 out of 4 shots when they chip or they hit around the green, 75% of the time they're within 12 feet. So again, you can just see how the tour player and the player that's shooting 70 or better just does it a little bit better. Total putts, again, under 30. What we can really see here are 1-putts are at 6.5, and then we can see 3-putts are down to a half, right? So they make 6 more 1-putts than they do 3-putts. So again, what we're starting to see is they're converting for birdies and birdies and pars quite often with their ability to make 1-putts. And again, there's kind of the holy grail, right? I always say, why does on tour or at your club, why does the club player win? Is he doing it different? Usually not, right? It's not like the winner is taking it down the left side of the fairway and the losers or the rest of the field is taking it down the right side. It's not what happens. They roughly do it the same, but what happens is the winner just does it disproportionately better. And that's why golf is so hard, because even though you might be playing the best round of your life, there's probably someone in the field that's playing better. And there's nothing you can do about that. So the beauty of it is you can only compete against yourself and your abilities on that day, and then you go to the scoreboard. If you took that attitude on the golf course, you'd be a much happier golfer, right? If you're allowing other players to dictate your feeling of how you're playing, golf is hard enough. You just made it disproportionately harder. But this is the beauty of the system, right? This is just kind of takes you through 4 major steps. Par or better, shooting 70s, shooting 80s, shooting 90s plus. What are these numbers and what do they look like? Now, if you go to Golf High IQ, which I just started, I'm going to start creating a lot of videos that will start backfilling a lot of this. We just did short putts. We're getting ready to go to do some short game stuff. Or we started the short game this week, and then we'll keep growing from there. So keep diving in there, and we're going to talk about P12, P6, and the event coming up, or chips inside of 12 feet and chips inside of 6 feet coming up next week. And start to learn and start to train better. Because if you train better, you have a good concept, you have good goals, and you come up with a really good training program, you can't help but get better. That's the beauty of the system, right? And our goal here inside of GolfCask is to elevate everybody's whiskey tasting as well as golf. So this is what it looks like to become a better golfer. If there's any questions on this, let me know. You can definitely reach out to me via brian@golfcast.com. Ask questions. If you want to come see me, of course, I'm going to be more than happy to help you out with performance inside of golf and whiskey. I love giving golf lessons, and we go and talk performance and have a great pour. So that is definitely an option if you want to come visit me here in Charlottesville, Virginia, or if you're around the world somewhere, tell me where you're at. I know a lot of really good coaches, and I can steer you in the right direction. So thank you again for joining us. GolfCast Nation, cool stuff coming up December 6th, 7th, 8th. Irons and Oaks will be in Virginia. That is our whiskey golf event, kind of our premier event. I hope you can come join. We have 20. We're opening the field up this year to 20. Last year we did 16. So we're making it a little bit bigger, but we have half the field has already kind of been picked up. So we only have maybe 8 to 10 spots left, give or take, since I opened it up to 20. So if this is an interest, reach out to me again and get your name on the list. And I look forward to meeting you if I haven't come December. So thank you again. Cheers. Salancha. Wish you great golf.